Everybody, it's Mike from the Mike Wagner Show, powered by SoundCloud Studios, brought to you by official sponsor of the Mike Wagner Show, international warring author Mia Molson Zia Missing, available on Amazon in paperback and ebook. Coming soon, Missing 2 by Mia Molson Zia, double the expense, double the fun. Check it out on Amazon. Also brought to you by Sweet Psalmist by Serena Wagner, based on the life of David, non-Amazon. Keyword Sweet Psalmist Serena Wagner. And the Sunset Swing, Eric Diamond with his latest All of Me. New music coming soon. eric.music.com, Spotify, YouTube, and more. Check him out on Facebook as well. We're here with amazing author and multi-Emmy-nominated executive producer and director of historic films for Discovery, BBC, PBS, the History Channel, National Geographic for 25 plus years. He's been doing it since 1997. He's developed, overseen, produced 1,000 hours of factual programs. He has extensive experience working with archaeologists all around the world, and he's an award-winning creator, executive producer for such programs like Shark Week, Brain Games, Mystery of the Abandoned, Border Wars, and more. He's got a new book out, which is about TV director Jared Plumman having vivid flashbacks in ancient Egypt. And what's the flashbacks about? We'll find out in Primetime Travelers, books 1 and 2, messing up one episode at a time. Live, ladies and gentlemen, plus dudes in beautiful downtown Brooklyn. The amazing author, multi-Emmy nominated executive producer, and director. And got the book Primetime Travelers, the multi-talent Neil Laird. Neil, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Thanks for joining us today.
First of all, I'm impressed you got through all that information without one stammer. I can tell already I'm in good hands. That's very slick. Thanks for having me on.
Well, it's great as well, too. With all his accomplishments, it's got to be done in one take. You think about it. You can't go back. You can't say, okay, take one, take two, take three, like in these so-called reality shows. It's like, it's got to be done. That's how it's back in the day. So you're an author, multi-Emmy nominated executive producer, director of historic films for Discovery, BBC, PBS, History Channel, National Geographic for 25 years. You've been doing it since 97. You develop, oversee, produce 1,000 hours of factual programs, experience with archaeologists. You have an award-winning creator, executive producer for Shark Week, Brain Games, Mystery of the Abandoned, Border Wars, and more. You have a new book about TV director having vivid flashbacks in ancient Egypt, possible stress of his first international shoot, and a breakup of his boyfriend Carlos. And the book is called Primetime Travelers, just going through all the mysteries, all the hoops, and more to get to where we need for the shoot. Before we get everything, Neil, tell us how I first got started.
Well, that does go back. It's a good question because I always loved filmmaking. When I grew up, I was always the guy watching the epic movies on television, the Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, and Lawrence of Arabia, Seven Samurai. Those are my best friends. I could watch many hours. So I always knew I wanted to go into movies. But I went to film school, Temple University in Philadelphia, which is a film program back in the day. And of course, like any 20-year-old kid, I came out thinking now that I have my Bachelor's of Arts, I'll become Martin Scorsese overnight. That did not
I think everybody
transpire.
thinks like that too. It's like I thought being next Howard Stern coming out of school as well. So like, that's not the case. I know what you're saying.
Well, in hindsight, thank God we didn't know then what we know now. We probably wouldn't bloody well try, right? We had to be a bit
Exactly,
naive and
exactly.
stammer and
Cousin
stumble.
Brucey too. So
Yeah, because if someone told me it would take as long as it did, I may have, I don't know, opened a video store in Pittsburgh and stayed at home instead, which is where I was raised. But anyway, so I went to film school and then I got out, went to New York City, and then quickly found out, oh, it's going to be a lot more work than I thought, even getting any jobs. And I was the poor guy holding a walkie-talkie on schlubby horror films like Talking Avenger 16 or something, and
oh
became
yeah.
rather disillusioned and extremely poor in New York City. So with nowhere else to be, I started hanging out at the New York Public Library because it was free and air conditioned and I could take books out for free. And then one day I picked up a book off the shelf about the rise of Neolithic man, about civilization, which is something I never got in my small Catholic school in Western PA. I just didn't have history then, except for John, Mark, Luke, and whoever the others were. It was just so a penny dropped, and I became absolutely fascinated with civilization. And because I had so much free time in my hand, I resolved to teach myself history through the New York Public Library, at least until the phone didn't ring again. And then
Mm.
so I read book after book after book about I did it chronologically. And but when I got to Egypt and when I got to Mesopotamia, when I got to those early civilizations, I got stuck. I became so enamored of that part of the world that it kind of changed my life. It actually has changed my life because I'm still talking about it now, and my whole career has been based on those twin things, filmmaking, but also ancient history and archaeology and the Middle East and Egypt. So I backpacked for 8 or 9 months through those countries. This was the early 90s. And I came back and my head was so high in the clouds that I figured, how the hell can I do this all the time and have somebody pay me? So I
Hmm.
went back, got my master's degree in documentary filmmaking, made my thesis about the Great Sphinx of Egypt, which at the
Oh,
time
wow.
was falling apart. They did this really botched restoration in the late 80s. They got some Italian contractors or somebody to make it like they were building a house. And the Sphinx pretty much rejected the stones. It started falling off. And the Sphinx was in far worse shape. So I knew somebody on Antiquities board, and I heard they're going to restore the Sphinx by using the ancient technology as much as they could know, the techniques. So they got some stonemasons from East Cairo, very modest Arab, all Arab Egyptian people who went back to the ancient ways as much as they could, and they restored the Sphinx. And I documented that. And I spent about 8 or 9 months clambering over the Sphinx and on top of the head and following the stonemasons home. And then I sold that from the Discovery Channel. And I've been doing that ever since. And I pretty much just was able to get out of the box, sell my first film, and then kind of become Mr. Archaeology in Egypt and Mr. Historical Filmmaker ever since.
Oh, wow. That is one heck of a journey. I got to say that really taking and undertaking everything like that. What are some of your favorite archaeological digs or findings back in the day besides, with the Sphinx and, have done by Italian contractors only to mess it up? What are some of your other finds you found, very amazing?
Well, as a filmmaker, keep in mind, it always feels like you're there when they're discovering that mummy's tomb or that lost treasure. But of course, it's not. The archaeologists have been doing years of work before the film camera shows up. But there have been a few times where I was on the set or something happened where it was not scripted, where we were shooting something else and suddenly we're there at the right moment. And I'd say one of them was Egypt again. We can talk about many other, I've been to 70 some countries, but I think of this Egypt one because it's one of the early shows that I did and it was hard to replicate. A few years later, I was back in the Giza Plateau where the pyramids are, and we're doing a documentary about who built the pyramids. And people always assumed it was either slaves, which is not, or it was a constricted workforce, conscripted workforce, which is probably more true. But they found while we were there doing a documentary about the pyramids itself, they found a unknown cemetery at the foot of the Giza Plateau where the workers of the pyramids were buried.
Oh.
And they only found it because someone at that this is that late 90s, I suppose, early
Hmm.
O. They only found it because there used to be stables over there in Egypt where people would hire horses for the afternoon and ride around, and you get a guide and you go out and look at the pyramids and run around the desert. And the stables for these tourist horses were over where the tombs were. And as they were taking one of the horses back, one of the horse's hooves fell through a hole in the sand. And they
Ooh.
looked at it and they realized they were looking into an ancient tomb that had never been discovered before. And so we came down with our camera just as they were opening this up. And it wasn't a King Tut tomb where you would see gold and the glitter of all these jewels. They were very modest people. They weren't even mummified. Mummification was for the rich. You and I probably have been chucked in some sort of dusty bin and then left to
Right. Yeah.
go.
Or it's like, as glorious, saran wrap, garbage bag,
Yeah,
or
yeah,
say
yeah, yeah.
like with
Whatever works.
wax
Fine
paper,
bucks.
something like that, or parchment paper. Yeah.
Just
I'll take
Target
parchment
bag.
paper. Thank you. So
Recycled
I get a meat
Target
bucket.
bags. We have so many laying around.
Oh my
Anyway, so
God.
when I was there, and this is why I mentioned this story, is it was like a beehive tomb. So it wasn't dug down. It was almost like a little bubble of mud brick, I suppose. And as they opened it up, what was amazing was the first thing that happened was all this hot air rushed out.
Oh wow.
5,000-year-old air that had been in there, untouched for almost 5 millennia, 4,500 years. And I can still remember, I'm probably exaggerating over the years, but it felt like my eyebrows even singed. It was that hot. But basically, it was escape of this air, the same air that the high priest breathed before they closed his tomb 4,500 years ago was the same air that brushed past us. And then we looked down, and there was just a mummy or a skeleton wrapped up in the fetal position, which is how they would bury them, and then several jars, several pots and jars around them, where they're taking the modest things into the next world. And they were undecorated, they were clay, nothing very fancy, but they were all perfectly intact, not one scratch on them. And as we were sitting there setting up our shot, we heard a crack. And we looked in, and two of the pots had already broken apart and already falling to dust.
Oh
Because
my
once
gosh.
we opened those worlds, that bubble that was been preserved for almost 5,000 years with the modern world and the air and the oxygen, the moisture, everything's off. And those tombs started to decay straight away. Now, again, because this was not gold or anything, it wasn't all that valuable to the archaeologists. But it reminds me all the time that archaeology is destruction. And every time you open one of these things, you better be ready to make sure you have everything to document it, not just the cameras, but all the scientists and the archaeologists, the people that do all that great work. Because as soon as you open it, the clock is ticking.
Hmm. That is rather interesting. Talk about the clock is ticking, and how much government is involved with as well, too. Like any restrictions, rules, regulations, or anything like that, or any entity that's involved with it.
With in terms of,
Not in terms of like getting permits, fines,
oh my
clock is
goodness,
ticking,
yeah. I mean,
everything
look,
like that. Yeah, rules and regulations. That seems to drive people nuts, like myself. So.
I mean, I've several Egyptologist friends or archaeologist friends, and getting permits to even turn over a hunk of soil in Greece or Rome or Egypt is not only very difficult, everybody wants to do it, but it's also very expensive. For example, I've done a lot of shows about Egypt and Pompeii. Pompeii is a place I've been to a lot as well. And Pompeii, of course, is one of the biggest archaeological sites in the world and all the and to even put your camera down in Pompeii, I think it's like, I don't know, $10,000 an hour or something
10,000 an hour just put your camera down there.
to
I mean,
shoot.
what would they charge in the U.S.? Was it like $100 an
No, it
hour
depends
there?
on where. Here, the U.S. I mean, look in New York. Look with laborers in New York and L.A. and the film towns. You show up with a film crew, and you're definitely going to get noticed. If you want to shoot in my hometown of Pittsburgh, no one will be care if you have a six person crew because they're very happy for the company. It all depends on where you're shooting and how much, because they know money's to be made in these places. Now that's more features and stuff. I mean, things have changed a lot because so much of what we shoot now. I mean, I do kind of the big budget documentaries for PBS and National Geographic and BBC and those kind of places, and they still make them. But because of the advent of home cameras and home video devices and those kind of things, people don't need the tripods. They don't need all the accoutrements anymore. A lot of documentaries are made guerrilla style or on the fly. Those things you almost do for free. But when you get to archaeologists, if you want to be inside a tomb, if you want to get an archaeologist to show you around something, or as an archaeologist, you want to dig somewhere, it's years and years of planning. You don't just show up in a country, particularly a host country, and say, I want to dig here and see if I can find Julius Caesar's tomb, you know.
Mm-hmm. Now, I was thinking about let's say you go find Julius Caesar's tomb or Atlantis or anything like that. How much time do you have like to apply for a permit? Is there a waiting list there? And of course, rules and regulations. How long does it take to get on a waiting list, or how long does it take to even like get a permit to dig these days?
You talk about the digging and the shooting. I mean, the digging, you'd have to ask an archaeologist because, we don't, when I go along, we tag along with the archaeologist or Egyptologist or Mayanologist, whoever already there. But I do know that it could take years and years. And of course, it's funding. So almost all archaeology is done through universities and things like that, and they have to be sponsored. And keep in mind that each country has their own rules and regulations. So I say, countries that are very popular with archaeology, Greece, Italy, Egypt, there are a lot more hoops to jump through than if you were shooting in, I don't know, Croatia or someplace that maybe doesn't have quite as many ruins. That's a bad example because there's a lot of ruins in Croatia. But you know what I mean? It's all up to the country, the host country. The states as well. You don't just dig anywhere because, again, to that point, archaeology is destruction. So you have to make sure the right person is the one that's opening that tomb or looking inside that temple because you can't put it back together, and that's information that is completely lost. I remember I was doing a show in Gibraltar, wonderful group of archaeologists, and they had found a cave right along the edge of the Gibraltar overlooking the Mediterranean. It was a Neanderthal site.
Oh
And it goes all
wow.
the way back to 30,000 years, and then there's dates may be wrong. They become so deep, I forget how late it was. But I remember they just found a dig site of Neanderthals, and not just found for years they've been digging it. And I made a History Channel show there. And we're traipsing through it. And my cameraman is going to get a shot, a wide shot, and he steps over a line, basically a small thin line of rope that went across where it was smooth. And the archaeologist screamed and she shrieked, "To get the hell out of there. I've been digging that site for a year and a half, and all that layer and all that strata was just ruined because your boot just went through 3 or 4 inches of sediment." What to us was
Really? Just
dusty
three,
floor
four
to them,
inches?
because
Oh my gosh.
the way you dig is by strata. It's by centimeter by centimeter by centimeter. So, if you find a tooth down here, and it's next to a charcoal, you're going to know it's 10,000 years old. If it's 2 inches higher, it's 6,000 years old. Things that you and I would never notice. But the archaeologists, those small little things, those tiny, minuscule things, are how they date, or how they determine what happened there. And one person's boot in 1 second theoretically destroyed that. I mean, there was other strata they could go through, but it just reminded us both, oh, what looks to us like just a very simple job is painstaking work. And it truly is science. And it's not the Indiana Jones we want it to be. We'd all love
Right.
to see walk into a tomb in the jungle opening up and see a crystal skull. Most of the time it's a few potsherds. You're trying to figure if it's 10,000 years old or 800 years old.
Hmm. And of course, there's also some advanced equipment as well too. That of course, they got advanced equipment they use now. Back in the day, it was like rather archaic. And I think I remember working with ones like I'm trying to think of one you put down the ground seismic. I can't remember what it is. So
GPR, ground penetrating radar.
yes, that's it. Yes.
Yeah, and of course now the big thing, which is an article in today's New York Times about it, LIDAR, which is light imaging detection and something or other. But basically, it is using lasers to look underneath the canopy, underneath the foliage, particularly in jungles, because it's non-evasive. So you don't have to do any digging. But with LIDAR, which is attached to the bottom of planes, going back and forth over the jungles of Mesoamerica, they are finding dozens and dozens of ruins for the Mayan and the Inca and the Olmecs they didn't know existed before. Lost cities, lost cultures beyond them. That's even without boots on the ground. They can now do that all through LIDAR from a plane. So it is totally rewriting what we thought we knew about the New World in terms of
Hmm.
archaeology and ancient history.
It certainly does too. And of course, a gentleman who tries to do that messes up one episode at a time. He's in Primetime Travelers. We'll talk more about that with Neil Laird. But first, listen to the Mike Wagner Show at themikewagnershow.com, powered by Sonic Web Studios. Visit online at sonicwebstudios.com for all your needs. Look at a professional website without breaking your budget. Sonic Web Studios is the answer. Sonic Web Studios offers fast, affordable custom web designs that blow the competition away. Call today 1-800-303-3960. That's 1-800-303-3960, or email to support@sonicwebstudios.com. Mention the Mike Wagner Show, get 20% off your first project. Sonic Web Studios, take your image to the next level. Also, time to give an official shout out to our official sponsor of the Mike Wagner Show, international warring author Mia Molson-Zia. If you love fast-paced mysteries, you love Missing by Mia Molson-Zia, available on Amazon paperback and ebook. Missing is fast-paced and intriguing with an unforgettable twist. Takes place in 4 countries, 2 strangers, one target, where truth is illusion and those you love will be the first to go missing. It's available on Amazon and paperback and ebook. Missing by Mia Molson-Zia has got great reviews. And Evil Evan enjoys by Howard celebrities, including Jordan Cassie, Forrest Riley, and many others. So grab your copy today, for it goes Missing by Mia Molson-Zia, available on Amazon. Coming soon, Missing 2 by Mia Molson-Zia, double the suspense, double the fun. Check it out on Amazon. Also brought to you by Sweet Psalmist by Serena Wagner, advancing a life of David, including 30 exquisite paintings and King David Psalms. The Sweet Psalmist gives a new perspective of David through the Psalms he wrote in his time as a shepherd where it started, and complicated yet turbulent relationship with King Saul. It's a story of love, betrayal, repentance, hope, and more. Check out the Sweet Psalmist by Amazon, by Serena Wagner on Amazon. Keyword Sweet Psalmist Serena Wagner. And brought to you by Sensei Swing, Eric Diamond with those latest release, All of Me, featuring the title track, I've Gotten a Heartache, Bring Me Sunshine, Strike a Match, and more. Eric's a multi-award winning artist, inducted numerous Hall of Fames, album Entertainer of the Year, and release a new CD soon. Check out the amazing Eric Diamond today, ericdiamondmusic.com. Follow on Facebook, YouTube, Spotify, and all platforms today. Also, check out the Mike Wagner Show at themikewagnershow.com. 40 podcast platforms, 100 countries. Take us with you on any mobile device. Also, follow us on Spotify, Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, iHeart, Apple, and more for great gift ideas. Check out the Mike Wagner Show podcast, t-shirts, pop sockets, throw pillows, tote bags, hoodies, make great gift, Amazon.com. Check out the Mike Wagner Show podcast, And for more great gift ideas, go to amazon.com/MiaMolsonZia for great books like Missing, Once and Wrinkles, Cool Merchandise, and more. And support the Mike Winter Show on Anchor FM, PayPal, and the MikeWinterShow.com. We're here with amazing author, multi-Emmy nominated executive producer, and director of historic films, Neil Laird, here on the Mike Winter Show. Before we get into his first book, Primetime Travelers, which is books 1 and 2, messing up one episode at a time, he would calls it. You have also developed and also other worked programs like Shark Week, Brain Games, Mysteries Abandoned, Border Wars, and more. Tell us more about those.
Where do we begin? I don't know. I've been after I sold that film about the Great Sphinx. I've been doing work for all the networks for the last 25 years or so, and it's not all archaeology. Like I said, I did Shark Week for 7 or 8 years. Now, there's a difference in terms of for the first 10 or 15 years of my career, I was the guy who went in the field. I was the guy who climbed over the Sphinx and the guy that went in the tombs on the stuff we were talking about. And then I was hired first at National Geographic and then at Discovery Channel, Science Channel as an executive producer for the network, which simply means that I'm the guy who sends people out. I'm the guy that is the boss back at the office who arranges the scripts and hires the people and they go out and then I, get it ready for the network. So Shark Week's an example of that where I never went in the field on Shark Week, but I would oversee 7 or 8 Shark Week episodes in it every summer. So my life was watching cuts and reading scripts and talking to people in the field. And when things went down and they needed 3 more days of shooting because of bad weather in Bimini, they'd call Neil, 2 in the morning or the network and saying, we're stuck. So that's the business side of it. So I've done both of it.
And plus, you have a new book out there about a TV director named Jared Plummer having flashbacks in ancient Egypt. Possible stress of his first international shoot, breakup of his boyfriend Carlos. In the book, Primetime Travelers, books 1 and 2, just kind of going through what you do, with the discoveries in Egypt, and also the times of a TV miniseries and all that. And tell us more about that. It's got intrigue, mysterious woman, open portals, short, all these shoots and everything like that. Grace documented all the time and everything else.
Yeah, because I've done so many hours, 1,000 some hours of nonfiction TV, which always to be footnoted and buttoned up. After a while, I'd go out on these ancient sites and I got tired of looking at all the rocks and ruins and trying to imagine what things look like. And I kind of want a bit of fun with the facts. So I realized the only way to do that is to create fiction. So I wrote 1 or 2 other books, one strictly about ancient Egypt that took place in the past, and I was unable to kind of get any traction with it. And then remember someone told me, and it says, well, write what you know. And it's very unique that you have this business, this day job of what we've been talking about. So I took those 2 loves and I made it about a film crew, rather cheesy TV crew for an ancient aliens like show that's in way over their head. And they're making season 3 of some sort of, crappy host-driven archaeology show we've all seen. And yet they happen to find a portal into the ancient past. So in the first book, they go back to ancient Egypt during the time of Ramses the Great, and they finally have to get 12 hours to get through the Duat, the ancient underworld, and get out. But they're shooting it all, so they could win an Emmy. So what they're being driven by is the Emmy nomination if they survive the underworld of Egypt. And so it's a very comedic novel that skews and celebrates both my day job. It allows me all the love that I have of the ancient world to bring that to life back in the day, not just the ruins or the fallen pillars or the bleached landscape, but to actually plop someone down in Karnak Temple when it was brand new and freshly painted and King Tut was walking down the street. So that one came out first, and then I did the sequel came out last fall, Primetime Pompeii, where after the first one's a hit, they get a bigger budget from the network and they get to go to Pompeii and tell a story on the eve of the eruption. But of course, there has to be complications, so they discover that their timing is a bit off, and they got there a bit late. So if they don't get their bloody ass out in time, they're going to be the victims as well. So it's action adventure, it's comedic, and it's time travel, but it's all driven by a film crew. The lead 4 characters are film crew. And being a gay filmmaker myself was very important to make gay characters in my book. So in the first book, Jared Plummer, who's a young, naive, first-time director from Middle America, he comes out and he deals with a homophobic host and all the other things, and I kind of look into himself and find out who he is. And the second book is Camera Woman, a lesbian from the Bronx, a tough as nails camera woman. She falls in love with someone in ancient Pompeii. And does she tell the woman that Pompeii is going to explode and mess up the fabric of time and save someone she fell in love with? Or does she not touch things and then lie and tell them they're not here for the eruption of Pompeii, you know? So it brings in the old question of if you know something that somebody else does and it could save their lives, what do you do?
Hmm. You mentioned time portals as well too. Maybe think of Sliders if you remember that. We watched
Oh,
that
yeah.
years ago, and of course, if you touch one little thing, like if you're in Cleveland, San Francisco, like say you're in 2400, or go back to Cleveland in 92 BC, you touch one little thing, you're gonna mess it up. You're not gonna have the Cleveland Indians. You're not gonna have these San Francisco Giants, or you're not gonna have the Brooklyn Bridge or Cleveland and been the world's biggest thing. Instead of New York, one little thing, it's like you would mess it up.
Yes, the old butterfly effect they call it. And of course, it's always fun to play with because, I don't believe in time travel. I've always been the village skeptic. It's great fun, but the idea of what does change if you save somebody in ancient Pompeii in say 9 AD, does that wipe out a bloodline? Does that mean somebody else doesn't get out? Does that mean that person doesn't get born because that woman moves somewhere else? Or all these questions that you can come out of it. You can go on and on and on. And what I found when I wrote these books, what you have to do with any kind of fantasy, you have to create your own world, the world building, and you got to stick with whatever nonsense and fun you've came up with.
Mm-hmm.
So a
Right.
portal has to always be a portal. Whatever issue is in this book has to be in this one. You readers expect you to follow whatever guidelines you have. So that's also been fun because then I can kind of play with that as much as I want to. The third book that I'm writing now, they go back to ancient Troy and the Trojan War. And one of the hooks there is they know they can't touch anything or do anything to change it. They're supposed to be fly on the walls and shoot it. But what do you do about the Trojan War when it may not even have happened? We don't even know if
That's true.
Agamemnon existed. So if you meet Agamemnon or Achilles, you could probably just do anything you want because theoretically, none of it's true. So the question is, what is real and what is not, what is myth and what we think is truth today, we go back and it looks completely different. So in that book, I really pushed the idea of, well, we probably can mess with time, particularly when time wasn't exactly what we thought it was anyways. If Homer
Mhm.
created this all 700 years later, just for a good rollicking yarn, then what does it matter? He's going to create the same thing again 700 years from now.
Mhm. Right, and it made me think of Helen as well too. It's just like if something were to affect Helen, like a little touch, would still she be as beautiful, more beautiful, average, or just ugly? You wonder about that.
Yeah, or wish he fell in love with the camera guy instead and leave Achilles completely, so I mean, yeah, anything could happen. And that's what's fun about him because you create the rules, and I think my readership kind of knows they trust me. They know I know these worlds, so they go along for the ride and the romp. So, but it's really all about character. I think the books work and people like them because you fall in love with Kara and Jared and Ali, the sound guy. Hopefully, that's why they keep coming back. So, the idea is to create a series where we get to see these four time traveling TV crew grow. Each book as a chance for that one to shine.
And I think that's great too. We cover the primetime travelers. Now, did you say there's already like books 1 and 2 on prime time? You already have a Pompeii, you have a primetime Troy, and do you have another one that's gonna be in the works
No,
soon?
Troy is the one I'm writing now. The first one is
It is
Egypt,
okay.
Time Travelers. Pompeii came out last fall, and now I'm writing Primetime Troy, which will probably be out later this year, or early the year after. I had to get back to my day job and make a little money, so I had to put, writing novels is great, but of course, it's not where the millions come in.
Right, yeah, and of course I thought about Julius Caesar too back in the day. What if Julius Caesar wasn't killed? What if it was Brutus that got killed? I'm thinking about that. It's like what would happen if Julius Caesar wasn't killed?
Yeah,
Then what?
if
So
you save somebody, let somebody else die, particularly, and the fun thing is the camera, because when I was in film school, we always talked about the different dynamics, the different rules of documentary filmmaking. There was direct cinema and there was verite. And then direct cinema was just kind of throwing yourself in there and just knowing yet, just by you being there, you're creating a different reality by having a camera. Then there's verite, which is fly on the wall. And the idea is going to be as invisible as possible. Both are right and wrong because it's impossible to be invisible completely, because people are going to act differently because there's a camera in the wall or a camera in the room. But then conversely, people will stop caring about the camera and go back to living their lives anyways. But the truth is, once you bring a camera, that could be enough to offset stuff. So put that in the ancient past, and just by having the presence of a camera at the Ides of March when Julius is about to be killed. Maybe, Brutus looks away or wants an extra shot and he misses Julius Caesar and he gets away. Whatever, you can create all kind of fun dynamics with it just by having the presence of an outsider.
Oh my gosh. And can you imagine having cameras on Helen of Troy? It's like, what would happen? Maybe she'd become like the first selfie or something.
Wouldn't you love to see that? I'd love to be able to go back and see. I mean, that's one of the reasons why I wrote these books, because I like to live there. I want to go back and see what Troy looked like at 1000 BC when, you know, the Greeks pulled up in their 1,000 ships for the first time. Who wouldn't want to be a fly in the wall there?
And of course, the Pharaoh as well, too. And what was it? What was it back in the day? And of course, parting of the Red Sea and everything like that. If I were to go through time, I want to see what the Pharaoh was really like. Nice
Mhm.
guy, good guy, generous. Really that bad? I mean, God knows.
Right. It's hard to know. I mean, right now, as I mentioned, I'm working for a History Channel show. We're looking for ideas and we're writing treatments for a show. And what I was just digging in today was Caligula truly mad, or was he maligned, and was he turned into a mad emperor after the fact or not? And that's a good question to ask because he's been dead for 2,000 years. So we recognize that history is written by the winners. We recognize that propaganda, and one of the reasons that we know Caligula and Nero as these mad emperors was mostly came down to one book called The 12 Caesars, written by a guy named Suetonius, about 100 years after the fact. And he had an axe to grind. He had a political agenda. He hated the emperors. He wanted to go back to the period of the Republic before. So he was taking down all the emperors and making them look bad to let people know that having an imperial Rome was a bad idea. Let's go back to the Senate. So, of course, he talked about all the salacious stuff. But since that's the only book largely that exists from that time period, at least the most popular one, that's what we based all our assumptions on. Something was written 100 years after the fact by somebody who has an axe to grind. There may be truth in a lot of what he says, but at the same token, there could just be propaganda or mudslinging we don't know about. And that's the issue with history, particularly when you go that far back. We don't have multiple sources sometimes, so we're relying, people base books on earlier books, and those books may not be accurate. So people will cite Suetonius because he's old and Roman as the original source, but Suetonius could have been a bullshit artist.
But then again, too, you think about some of the books that were written as well, too. They would say, this was correct, that was correct. And then someone else finds additional information and say, this is correct. That's been added
Yeah.
in, never mentioned books. There's going to be a debate about, what is accurate, what is not, what is truth, what is fiction,
As
everything
it
else.
should be, as it should be, and exactly, and that's exactly what our shows like to do. It's really what archaeologists and historians and scholars do, because there's always new stuff to find, not necessarily in the ground, but in like, they're now looking AI, for example. One of the things they're doing now is they're looking at old parchments and papyri and stuff underneath there. They can scan, they can take all the letters and see variation. They can do something the human eye can't see. So they can see where things have been changed or rewritten. They're able to kind of articulate stuff through AI in a way we can't do. So already the tools we have are bringing out things the human eye or archaeology or history has missed. So all the tools we have, like LiDAR we were talking about before, there's still great mysteries. We didn't know these cities existed in Mexico and Guatemala and Honduras until just the last 15 years. So who knows what other technology is going to come out that will prove Helen of Troy never did exist. We may find one day that the Trojan War absolutely did not happen. We still don't know. We know there's a Troy in Turkey. We know Homer wrote about it. We know there was a level of Troy that was burned around that same time period, but we have no idea. Sometime they may find some burnt scroll. In Pompeii, they have, I don't know if you've seen them, they have all the burnt scrolls from a villa in Herculaneum, which is a sister city. And they just look like burnt, logs. And what they are is scrolls. They were historical scrolls that was in somebody's library, but you can't open them now because if you do, they crack right apart. They're charcoal. But they're finally able to analyze them by penetrating it layer by layer, and they can read what's underneath upside down. Just last
Oh,
year, they were
wow.
able to finally analyze the first word of one of these. The word was purple. No idea what the rest of the context is, but the first word ever analyzed through new technology on a papyrus scroll burnt in a lava fire in 79 AD can now be read very slowly through a technology that didn't exist 20 years ago. So who knows
Wow.
what's going to happen 50 years from now?
And do you think AI is going to pretty much, take over everything? Or we're going to be becoming like over reliant on AI, or we're going to be like,
I don't think anybody knows that. I mentioned AI because of the tools in terms there. I mean, it's both a good and a bad thing. I think people in my business, a lot of them are going to lose their jobs merely because television and production rely so much. Copy editing is already dead. Transcription services are already dead. We have camera, before we fly our host to stand in front of the backdrop of the Acropolis and do a walk and talk in front of there. Now they could do that all with AI back in the studio in LA or New York or wherever they're doing it. So it's already changing in terms of how they make films, and the knock-on effect of that is less people are needed. So the business is contracting, and a lot of people are losing their jobs. And this is just my business; it's happening through,
mhm.
I'm sure, all across the board that I don't know about. That's just my small corner.
And do you think executive producers, executive directors, anybody upper management along those lines, will it be affected by AI too, or have like AI replace executive producers, directors, and everything
I
like
mean,
that?
it's hard to know. I think directors, I think anybody can be replaced, quite frankly. And I think the first knock-on effect is that there's less production being made, which is not just AI. It's just that the streaming service and stuff, they're making far less of these shows that I made. So therefore, they need less EPs, they need less directors, less gaffers and grips and hosts. And those people can't find work because there's less work to go around. But on top of that, we don't know where it's all leading in terms of like, I already know people in novels. I already when I submit my books, I now have to, make sure I tick boxes and they scan it to make sure there's no AI used in my cover design, which I think is great, and there is none. But a lot of people will not advertise there, Amazon or Facebook or some websites. They will not publish anything or promote anything that's been done by AI, either the artwork and particularly a book. Theoretically, I could say, okay, write me a Jared Plummer goes to the Mayan world, and I could plug it in. I still think humans need to be able to make it better, but you could spend a lot of time, save a lot of time just by plugging it in. So it's so nascent. I have no idea where we're going to be 10, 15 years ago, and no one else does either, I don't think.
Mhm. And
So
I
we
think a lot of them are
want to
using
find out.
Chat GP, or like a lot of them using Chat GPT. And I think there's a service out there right now
Yeah.
instead of on a word processor back in the day or a pen and paper. Like say if you want to write a book, you can just say a storm is coming, and you ramble on. Then you got this device or whatever program is. It'll simply just put it in a paragraph form for you. Like a page and everything. Like say you
Yeah,
want to
oh, yeah,
write
yeah, I've
about
seen it.
this,
Yeah.
and yeah, and Jared is saying, I love this thing. This sea is wonderful. And it just spills everything out for you, even from ramblings like we're doing.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen some in action. When I tried Chat GPT once or twice, it came back and it feels so awkward and stiff that I never use it. No, that's because it's 2 years old. Who knows what it'll be like again in 10, 15 years, or maybe 2 years. I don't know. I don't think it's there yet where to replace a human's creativity. But look, this is such a new sea change of technology. We have no idea where it's going to go.
Mhm.
And we may find a certain point where, yeah, I think just last week there was an article in one of the trade papers, Variety or Hollywood Reporter, there's some company in LA that has just put put some deal forward. I don't know the details, so somebody else might be able to correct me on this. But basically, they're going to make six AI created movies. They're gonna look like feature films for $500,000 each, or half a million dollars each, as opposed to like $60 million, whatever. So we'll see how those films are if they're any good. But they're going to create characters. And their argument is to start making feature films purely artificial intelligence.
And
Now,
using voices as well. Yeah. Oh my
everything.
God.
I mean, you can create anything right now. So the films, like anything else, may be very dodgy at first. It may feel like a gimmick, but it will only get better. And if that does work, and if people don't care, if they don't care to see a Tom Cruise or a Tom or a Brad Pitt or whatever, and the celebrities become artificial, and the game's over. We don't
Mhm.
need any more.
Right. And of course, Tom Cruise will probably be unemployed, Brad Pitt be unemployed. And of course, all the models out there, everything be unemployed. And I also thought about it too, that if I'm right, I think Disney might get involved in total AI, especially a classic. We're seeing like, Snow White, Dumbo, Pinocchio. I mean, what was it like? Oh gosh, what was the third remake of Pocahontas? And was it
I know they're
what
just
was it? The
remaking,
20
remaking. Already,
what
they're
was it?
already robbing the vault. So
Yeah, what was it? 25th a remake of Snow White, and what's next? The 1 millionth remake of the Three Musketeers?
but
What is going
that's
on?
just creative bankruptcy. Yeah, you can't blame AI for that in a way. I think it's just like they're running out of ideas. Everything's IP driven now too, intellectual property. So getting really hard. And one of the reasons my book didn't get picked up by a major distributor is because a major publisher is because you already have to come in with a huge IP or something that's already well known. So that's why you have 15 Game of Thrones or Harry Potter or James Bond spin-offs coming. But it's really hard to find original ideas. People just don't see them like they do another Marvel movie. So as a novelist or a filmmaker or a screenwriter or even a documentary filmmaker, to talk about something that already isn't well known, doesn't already have a franchise attached, is a very, very difficult thing these days.
And certainly as well too. And of course we'll talk more with Neil Laird and put a wrap on primetime travelers and more. You listen to the Mike Wagner Show at the MikeWagnerShow.com, powered by Sonic Web Studios, brought to you by official sponsor of the Mike Wagner Show, international warring author Me Molson's Missing, The Sweet Psalmist by Serena Wagner, based on the life of King David and King David Psalms, Amazon.com, keyword Sweet Psalmist Serena Wagner, and the Sensei Swing, Eric Diamond with All of Me, ericdiamondmusic.com, follow on Spotify, YouTube, and more. We'll be back with multi-talented author Neil Laird after this time. We're back with author, multi-Emmy-nominated executive producer, director Neil Laird here on the Mike Wagner Show at Primetime Travelers, books 1 and 2, along with Pompeii, Troy, and more. It's been great. We're looking forward to having more. Where can we find all your books and all your works at, Neil?
The books are available on Amazon, just like the books you held up. If you just Google my name, my Amazon, put in Neil Laird or Primetime. They call it the Primetime Traveler series. So, best thing is to find my name and do it that way. And then my website, neillaird.com, too, will have links to all that stuff.
All right, we'll certainly check that out as well, too. We're with author Neil Laird here on the Mike Wagner Show. And just a few more things, Neil. It's been great. Love have you back on. And what else can we expect from you in 2025 and beyond?
That's a good question. Well, certainly Primetime Troy will hopefully be finished and get out there. And then I'm also developing some projects about the Valley of the Kings in Egypt. I'm working on the History Channel on a great series called History's Greatest Mysteries with Lawrence Fishburne, which has been on for 6 years.
Uh-huh.
That's a great show and a great crew. So I've been doing some writing with them. And who knows, whatever else comes up. I'm always fishing for new stories and new places. And an archaeologist calls me or I call them or another idea comes with the book. And the great thing about it is it's kind of fun to make it up as you go. So ask me in a year and I'll say, oh shit, I didn't see that coming.
We'll make note of it. AI or no AI, we can do
Right.
that. So,
Fair enough.
right, who do you consider biggest influence in your career?
My biggest influence in career?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that's tricky because there are so many, depends on if we're talking about movies or books or everything else. I can certainly say the person that, and this is just, you wouldn't even think this would be the person that would inspire me to write novels. But I started writing my first novel later in my career when I was 50. And it had 2016, and two things happened in 2016 that made me decide finally get off the pot and write that first book. One was, as I just said, I turned 50. And the other one was that my great hero all my life of music, David Bowie, died. I was a huge
Oh,
Bowie
yes, I
fan from
love David
childhood.
Bowie.
I followed him, from the late 70s until he died. When that album came out, I'd be the first one to buy it. And I remember reading his obituary in January of 16, although I knew it frontward, forward, and backwards. But I was reminded of one of the reasons that Bowie was so brilliant was he was fearless. With every album, Bowie was not afraid to reinvent himself. And if it didn't work, then he dusted himself off, and then suddenly he's gone from industrial to drum and bass or to jazz fusion or whatever. And he keeps trying. And I remember reading his obituary and thinking, if David Bowie could have done it 28 times, Neil Laird can do it once. He can reinvent himself once.
And I think
And that's
that's
how I
great
wrote
as
my
well.
first book.
That's great as well, too. Now I mentioned David Bowie. What would you say your all-time favorite David Bowie song, or maybe like, two or three off the top of your head?
I wouldn't say song. Well, I mean, my favorite album is probably Ziggy, Low. I'm a big fan of Heathen too, one of his later ones. I think my
Uh-huh.
favorite all-time Bowie song is from Aladdin Sane called Time.
Okay.
I don't know if you know that. Go play that. It's very theatrical. It's very fun. It's one of the albums that I first got into when I was young, and that's what's so singular about Bowie. It's catchy and theatrical and very British and very strange and very odd and extremely hummable. That might have been the song that pushed me over the edge and made me a Bowie freak.
And I think that's really great as well, too. And what's the best advice you can give to anybody at this point?
Do it now. Don't wait. You got an idea? Start writing. You want to take a trip? You want to see the pyramids? Do it now. Don't wait until it's comfortable, until you're a little further ahead. Just jump. Leap before you look.
And I think that's a great idea as well, too. Here with the amazing author, multi-Emmy nominated executive producer, director Neil Laird with Primetime Travelers here on the Mike Wagner Show. Neil, a very big thank you for your time. You've been absolutely fantastic. Learned a lot. Looking forward and soon. Keep us up to date. Keep in touch. Glad to have you back. And what's your website? How do people contact you? Where can people purchase or check out your works?
You know where to find me. Thank you for having me on. That's fantastic.
And what's your website?
Oh, the website is neillaird.com.
All right. We want
right there in the
check.
name, right on the tin.
You got it. We'll check it out. Once again, Neil, a very big thank you for your time. You've been absolutely amazing. Learned a lot. Looking forward to having soon. Keep us up to date. Keep in touch. Glad to be back. We wish our best. And Neil, you definitely have a great future ahead of you.
Lovely. Cheers.